giants in the way of which it is better not to become. They are fast, agile, and incredibly hot-tempered. Only one predator is able to challenge them, but an attack does not always mean victory. Hello friends, you are on the Animal Instinct channel, and the heroes of today's issue are the embodiment of true strength. Bison. This word has long been a household name and represents, first of all, unshakable power and strength, and looking at the owner of such a name, nothing else comes to mind. Just look at them, huge, like a giant come to life from the past, with a height of 7 feet at the withers, and his weight can reach 2,200 pounds with a body length of up to 10 feet. A real ferocious machine with red eyes that still managed to survive despite the people. But about everything in order. Bison are the mouths of wild bulls living in the northern hemisphere, inhabiting Europe and North America. Moreover, the European species is called bison and the American bison, but both are extremely similar, both in their size and habits, and even extremely fervent disposition. However, there are still differences. The bison, with its slightly smaller mass, looks heavier than its counterpart, and all thanks to a lower set head and short legs. And of course, you can distinguish a bison by its trademark beard and fur shorts, which the front legs of the animal are wearing. Interestingly, both species are characterized by a noticeable hump on the back. It contains a reserve of fat that is used by animals during a lack of food, as well as thick fur, which especially tightly covers the front part of the animal. Thanks to him, bison can easily survive 30-degree frosts. These are the largest ungulates of their habitat, real fighting machines. They have the most powerful musculature, which is concentrated in the front of the animals. The broad shoulders have huge muscles that power his head and front legs, and the length of the vertebrae in the hump can reach 12 inches. The whole thing is protected by a shell of densely bristly wool 3 inches thick. He is like a helmet, perfectly extinguishes the blows that a bison has to withstand during fights for a female. Well, the back of the bison looks rather disproportionate. It seems that it is like from another animal, although it is also very functional. Despite its apparent clumsiness, it is able to easily deliver a very strong blow from which it will be difficult to recover. Needless to say, with such data, they simply cannot be calm, even in the minority. Bison constantly check by touch everyone they can reach. Even if they are deer or horses, they are also great. Although they are not at all rivals for this young bison, what can we say about the rut period? At this time, the animals unite in large herds to find a mate. Males have testosterone levels that are off the scale, and they only want one thing. But the number of ready-to-mate animals in the herd on almost any given day is usually no more than 3, and you need to fight for them. Battles are always very traumatic, so the bison first play with their muscles. Like bodybuilders on stage, they turn their sides to show themselves to the opponent in all their glory. If that didn't help, then it's time to cut the combat coloring. To do this, they urinate on the ground and wallow in the mud, raising dust. The smell of males rises in the air, and this is the last chance to avoid a battle. If nothing helps, then the ground around is shaken by such blows. Males collide with our foreheads with all their might. Tufts of fur fly to the sides at great speed, and clouds of dust rise in the air. Their goal is to gore the opponent, and with such a weight, any wrong move can be fatal. Every third male has broken ribs or worse. Many bison limp. Some even die from infection of wounds. Such fights exhaust fighters, and they lose a lot of weight during the rut. For example, a male bison can lose up to 100 kilograms. But none of the bulls will refuse to fight for the female. At such moments, they can easily run out on the road, and it is better to stay away from the bison, because they do not notice anyone during the fight and can damage the car. But sometimes such epic fights happen on the road. It's hard to even imagine what the drivers of the cars standing next to each other experienced. And here is another video in which one of the bison rams the other with all his might, and the blow fell straight into the side of the beast. He probably has a rib fracture, and it's certainly better not to honk the bison because the animals can switch their attention from each other to the driver. This time he was very lucky, because even a lonely bison will not miss the moment to butt overtaking his car. And the next driver decided not to overtake such an impudent person, and such cases occur very often in Yellowstone Park. Therefore, the driver was not very lucky, because the bison decided to push him, so much so that he tore off the rear bumper. Therefore, it is very rash, seeing these giants, to open the car window and try to feed him, because a bison can easily injure a person with horns or get tangled in the window and damage both the car and the people sitting in it. After all, such a mass does not forgive mistakes. As for wild animals, the enemies of bison too are wolves and bears. Hunting, as a rule, for young or lonely bison, then his blows are not so terrible and the prey can be filled up, although it will take quite a long time. But a lone young bison is easy prey for a grizzly. But if the bison are older, they will easily drive the club-footed predator back into the forest. But wolves are perhaps the most dangerous opponents. They have almost perfectly honed team hunting and constantly harass bison. Another thing is winter, when it is difficult for a bison to wade through the snow. Plus, problems also begin with nutrition, and often the search for grass takes more strength than energy from it. And since the bison needs about 55 pounds of grass every day, they're forced to slow down their metabolism and resist. It's much harder for wolves in this state. Even the herd does not always come to the rescue, as they prefer to conserve energy during this difficult time. And in winter, wolves are always in abundance. They can test the strength of even adult bison and often tear off stats. Having determined the goal, the wolves bite into her to stop and knock her down in the snow. True, the bison are still running from behind, and you can fend off the attack. But the bison running after decides otherwise. The herd sacrificed one member to save itself. Winter is a very difficult time, and each herd is thinning by about half. Lack of food, snow, and ice make any trail extremely dangerous. One wrong step and the leg is broken, and this is actually a death sentence. In winter, as well as falling through the ice, because without it, he will not be able to get out of there. A human would resist for no more than 15 minutes, while bison fight for 4 hours. But the result is usually the same. But even in such conditions, the number of bison used to be much larger. It numbered several tens of millions of individuals and was widely distributed throughout North America. But in the 19th century, the active development of the West began, and bison hunters poured in. The animals were exterminated by millions, and literally in 30 years, less than 1,000 individuals remained from the multi-million-dollar herd of bison. Moreover, 2 of the 3 killed bison were not used in any way at all. It is worth saying that such extermination of bison helped to solve the issue with the Indians, and the American government looked at everything through its fingers, only when there were practically no animals left. A law was passed banning hunting, and even then only in the Yellowstone Federal Reserve. However, surprisingly, the bison managed to restore their numbers, and now there are about 30,000 heads in the wild population. They are also successfully bred for commercial use, and this population is already 500,000 heads. However, very brave people are probably doing this because it is very easy to curb a 3-meter beast. He can easily demolish any gate. There was a fence made of iron pipes. It seems not at all a hindrance to this huge beast, and if he wants to climb over the fence, then it becomes scary from the realization that the bison will succeed, especially if you know that they are not clumsy at all and can easily jump over even a relatively high fence for them. And it is worth one of the so-and-so to do this, as the rest will quickly follow his example. Well, what can I say? A real wild temper. Bison have an excellent sense of smell and hearing, but their vision is far from ideal. So in case of danger, panic instantly covers all animals, and this is the best time for wolves to weed out young or weakened individuals. But even the young become difficult prey. It seems that the predators have everything according to plan. But in the struggle for life, even a wounded and exhausted bison can show his unprecedented strength to his opponents. After such a turn of events, the injured male abandons the battlefield. But the wolf does not think to retreat. Each ferocious attack of the bison causes her more and more injuries, but the predator understands that the stakes are too high. In the near future, given the injuries and lack of energy, she will not be able to hunt and will simply die from exhaustion. Therefore, she rushes to the attack with the last of her strength, despite the desperate resistance. The result of the hour-long battle is dramatic. The bison is no longer he will be able to get up, and the wolves can only wait. Now they have every chance of recovery, because such a carcass will feed them for weeks. Although the ending for the wolf could be completely different. A second's confusion and heavy hooves cause serious injuries, with which the outcome will definitely not be in favor of the predator. From birth, calves have to overcome adult trials. Sometimes they turn out to be too difficult and lead to sad consequences. The current carries the unfortunate baby further away from the mother. Although he managed to survive, so far it can hardly be called salvation, because such a situation becomes a real gift for a hungry lone wolf. The predator is not going to stand on ceremony with the prey, but almost from the very birth the calf has the skills of protection. He breaks out and even tries to attack, but the wolf has already smelled the smell of profit. His grip is getting stronger, and only an amazing will to live helps the calf to still stay on its feet. It seems that only a miracle can save him, which is the sudden return of his mother. The wolf's plans instantly collapse. It's time to fight back. Now that the family is reunited, the hunter has no chance. Even together, it is not so easy for wolves to repel a cub. Given the massive physique, the bison are incredibly mobile. The mother successfully blocks all the attacks of the pursuers, and the baby skillfully hides behind her as behind a solid wall. Organized predators, despite their proven tactics, simply do not have time to inflict serious injuries. Each attack is instantly stopped, and as a result, the family safely retreats to a dense forest, where the chase loses effectiveness. Adult and healthy animals are often too tough, even an experienced pack. Their quick temper, pointed horns, and heavy hooves are complemented by amazing agility. It's hard to believe, but these heavyweights can run for a long time at speeds over 40 miles per hour, and even jump high, so it's life-threatening to approach them, especially when it comes to the mating season. Most of the year, mature bulls live separately from the herd or gather together with the same bachelors, but at the end of summer, all unite in huge herds. Only the biggest and strongest bulls are destined to continue the race, and sometimes it is impossible to find out who is in charge without direct collision. Raising clouds of dust, the bulls impregnate the ground with a musky smell and demonstrate their strength to each other. After which, when the tension increases, they turn to a furious fight. Putting all the power into the attack, the rivals test each other for strength. The situation is heating up to the limit, and it can be deadly to miss an attack at this moment. Fights can last about a month, during which time dominant males almost do not eat and lose a significant part of their weight. Tibet is a fabulously beautiful mountain region, in which, however, it is not at all easy for animals to survive. After all, thin mountain air, low precipitation, and harsh climate create some problems for local inhabitants. But our hero, despite his size, is perfectly prepared for life in such conditions. Meet this yak, and it looks very unusual. The head of a cow, the body of a bison, the tail of a horse, and the hair of a goat. And at the same time, I'm still grunting, such an unusual combination. And for its voice, yak is often called grunting bulls. The fact is that they cannot moo and make sounds similar to grunting when they are unhappy or irritated with something. But only domestic yaks do this. Wild ones are usually silent, which is why they are also called dumb. When you look at this animal, you immediately feel its power. A huge, low-set head, a muscular body with long hair and a hump on the back, plus short legs, give our hero a very recognizable silhouette. And the yaks are the real heavyweights of Tibet. After all, old bulls can weigh 2,200 pounds. Moreover, the length of their body, excluding the tail, reaches 12 feet, and the height of the withers up to 6.5 feet. And males, as expected, are approximately twice as large as females. Although domestic yaks cannot boast of such data, and they are half the size of their wild counterparts, and in addition, they also show a much calmer disposition, but both of them are perfectly adapted to the harsh mountain climate. Yaks have a dense layer of subcutaneous fat and a thick undercoat, which allow the animals to easily withstand severe frosts and harsh winds. But because of this, animals do not tolerate temperatures above 15 degrees, quickly overheat and get sick. Therefore, in the summer, they climb mountains to heights of up to 20,000 feet. The air there is quite thin, but yaks have large lungs and a large heart, which effectively pumps blood. And the blood itself has a large amount of hemoglobin, which helps to easily deliver oxygen to all vital organs. In winter, the animals descend lower, but this is still an altitude of about 13,000 feet above sea level. At the same time, such high mountainous terrain is not at all a problem for the yak, and they move excellently in the mountains. Short, muscular legs easily lift a heavy body uphill, and its hooves allow it to rest on the ground and not slide down. And with all this, the yaks even manage to sort things out right in the mountains. But for energy, such a body needs food, which still needs to be found, and this is not always easy to do in mountainous areas. Therefore, yaks usually feed on mosses and lichens, shoots of bushes, grass, and even dried vegetation. And the special shape of the animal's lips helps in this matter. They are thin and easily allow you to dig out discovered food from under the snow. And the horns can also help, because yak, like a bulldozer with their help, skillfully removes the top layer of the earth. At the same time, even during feeding, it is better not to approach the yak, because their nervous system is very easily excitable and can become furious for any reason. And even domestic yak during milking usually first throw a rope over the horns. It is worth mentioning separately about yak milk. It is twice as fat as cow milk and has been widely used by Tibetans for thousands of years. For example, they make cheese and butter from it, which does not spoil for a whole year. True, they don't produce much milk, so they milk the yak several times a day. Animal wool is also highly valued. Clothing made from it is very warm, lasts a long time, and does not cause allergies. And of course, such natural climbers have long been used as beasts of burden. Yaks can carry heavy loads and do this for quite a long time, which is why in many mountainous regions they are still invaluable human assistants. Although they themselves are very capricious and unpredictable animals that avoid the close presence of humans, and they choose for their habitat hard-to-reach areas at an altitude of 13,000 feet. Yaks also live mainly in small groups of 10, 15 heads, which usually consist of females with young calves. Large males live and graze, mostly alone. But everything changes when autumn comes. Around September-October, the yak's rutting period begins, and the bulls decide to join the herds of cows. Then it becomes clear why they live as bachelors, because the bulls become extremely ferocious. They challenge opponents to a duel, and this is not at all similar to the exhibition battles of some other bovids. During the fight, the yaks use their long, sharp horns, weapons like daggers, trying to wound the enemy. They hold their heads low and meet the enemy's blows with it, and such blows look very powerful. During the fight, shreds of animal fur fly in different directions, but the yak cannot be stopped. The task of each male is to put the other to flight, and this is best done by knocking down the opponent. Look how yak lifts his opponent on his horns and puts him on his shoulder blades. However, the opponent here is not going to give up. Here's another similar throw with the horns. And here the defeated yak no longer wants to continue the battle. Moreover, such fights often take place in mountainous areas, and there are often cases when opponents push each other down. But don't worry, they are great climbers and usually climb back up easily. And of course, often a third person gets involved in such brawls, delivering an unexpected blow from behind. He can also help his comrade deal with a stronger opponent. But even one yak is capable of lifting a huge opponent into the air like this and spinning him around. And this yak is doing something incredible. He lifts his enemy and, spinning him around himself, throws him down. I can't even believe that this isn't a video montage. In this case, the horns can play a cruel joke on the animal. And here, one of the yak sticks them into the ground, performing a somersault. So you can see how hot these guys are, because they don't stop their battles even when they're in the river. It seems to me that they don't care where or with whom to fight, and people shouldn't delude themselves here. Indeed, in case of danger, yaks are the first to attack and can chase a car like this. And if you wound an animal, it will become even more aggressive, so they don't stand on ceremony with bulls and can easily push their opponent down. Moreover, this is not an isolated case, and these machines are not to be trifled with. Although some paths come across as worthy and offer good resistance to yak, even wolves rarely attack a yak, and usually they dare to do this only in the snow, so that the yak is heavier. But even then, yak can stand up for himself, and the wolf flies back from a powerful blow with its hooves. And here the dog decided to play with Yak, and the result, of course, is predictable. But another danger is the snow leopard. It is almost invisible in such landscapes. Yaks, by the way, have poor vision and usually rely on their sense of smell, but this time it malfunctions and the predator catches up with its target. He grabs the throat of a young calf. True, all this does not last long, and his mother arrives to help. She tries to trample the cat with her hooves and beat her with her horns. Although the leopard holds on very tightly, he still understands that the odds are not in his favor, and at some point releases his prey. Staying alive in such a hunt is the main task. Here's another similar attack, and in the same way, the herd does not abandon its own in trouble. The cow throws the snow leopard with its horns, but it holds the prey, and only when the hooves are used does the cat run away. The herd managed to protect the most valuable thing it has because females give birth to one calf per year. It is during the first year that he is most vulnerable. In the second year of life, it begins to feed on its own, becomes noticeably larger, and is already able to repel most predators. As for the population, there are only about 15,000 wild yak left, and this is quite small. As always, a negative influence is exerted by people who inhabit the historical habitats of the yak, and in some places even hunt them. In addition, wild yaks can interbreed with domestic ones, acquiring new diseases, and even shepherds in some countries take revenge on wild yaks if they take someone away from their herd. So it goes. This amazing beast turned out to be so strong and formidable. The top of the food chain in Africa is occupied by real masters of their craft, but even they can't handle all the inhabitants of the savannah. And these giants are an excellent proof of that. Being in a rage, they are able to lift their worst enemy into the air. And with the support of their comrades, these ungulates can deal with an entire pride. Animals that live in forests Central and West Africa do not differ in outstanding size, which cannot be said about so-called Cape buffaloes, typical inhabitants of the savannas of the southern and eastern part of the continent. They not only have a mass sometimes exceeding 2,000 pounds, but are also unpredictable, wayward, and sometimes incredibly aggressive ungulates. And they can afford it because, in addition to the frightening size, both males and females are armed with massive curved horns that they are actively engaged in business. The horns of bulls are traditionally larger. Their total length can exceed 8 feet. In addition, with age, they fuse at the base, giving their owner additional protection and shock power. Nevertheless, Africa is the birthplace of some of the most dangerous predators, so even such giants have enemies who, together, are able to deal with prey 10 times heavier than myself. However, the social behavior of buffaloes is not limited to joint grazing. These are some of the few ungulates who, risking their own lives, are ready to help those in trouble for relatives. This emaciated giant fell into the tenacious embrace of a lioness. His strength is only enough on an alarming roar, and bulls full of energy and rage come to the aid of the poor man, one of which literally stringing the enemy on a huge horn, repeating the movements. He is ready to tear the offender, barely leaving a chance to get away. Lionesses are inferior in size even to young individuals. Oh, but the key to their success is teamwork. However, difficulties may arise with an organized attack. Knocking down such an opponent is not an easy task, especially when a loyal friend comes to the rescue. Even if the predators manage to catch the buffalo by surprise, numerical advantage does not always solve. A strong hide protects the bull from sharp claws, and a whole mountain of muscles does not leave opponents a chance to stop such a titan. In addition, a buffalo that has taken a defensive position, it can be deadly, so the pride remains to retire with nothing. Buffaloes usually travel in herds of 20, 30 individuals, but in the dry season they gather with hundreds of their own kind. These animals do not see well, and mostly rely on the developed sense of smell, so the presence of an enemy rarely comes as a surprise to them. Lining up in tight rows, the ungulates slowly push the enemy out of the territory, not giving a chance to come from behind. At the same time, the bravest do not miss the opportunity to show the predators the seriousness of their intentions, and dangerous hunters often have to flee and even seek salvation in trees. Over time, the old males leave the herd, preferring solitude This does not make them easy prey because in addition to the record mass, these giants have aggressive disposition, which allows you to stand alone against the whole gang. Although the battle in the heat quickly, sooner or later, exhausts the bull and he loses his balance. However, the will to live is too great, and the buffalo gathers the last strength to get to his feet, showing who is the real owner of these lands. Exhausted from overheating, the lions are not ready to re-enter the battle, so the bull gains the right to life. If an adult, healthy male is too tough for even an entire pride, then the cubs become an object, the attention of many local predators, including solitary hunters. But even the king of beasts can know the anger of a mother who chooses to attack instead of escape. With amazing dexterity, she quickly makes it clear to Leo that further pursuit can be life-threatening. When the lions still manage to repel the cub, this does not guarantee a hearty lunch, and in a seemingly hopeless situation, the buffaloes suppress panic and return to the place of pursuit, determined by actions dispersing a whole pride of predators while managing to save the calf. Often it is panic that plays a key role, instantly covering the entire herd and turning it into an uncontrollable organism. Despite the massive body, buffaloes can run at a speed of almost 60 kilometers per age, but calves do not always keep up with everyone, becoming easy prey. However, it costs only one animal to slow down and show your intentions, as the number of intercessors instantly grows, and even the dead lion's grip under such pressure is loosened in the shortest possible time. Young lions expelled from the pride are forced to hunt alone. And if it is often not difficult to catch up with a buffalo, then not everyone can subdue it. In the course, the most desperate tricks are going on, but an attack without support most often turns into a failure. Angry animals are no worse than predators can work in a team, and this lioness got into a real environment. Trying to break through the defense, she risks running into one of dozens of massive horns, and only cat agility and lightning reflexes help to find a way out of the trap. Buffaloes do not like the heat, so the animals prefer to spend their daytime hours in the shade of trees, and in their absence, they spend the day in puddles and take mud baths, cooling the body and escaping from annoying insects. With the latter, they are also helped by resourceful philanderers. It is only with the onset of evening coolness that the ungulates go to pasture, where they spend the whole night because every day they need about 40 pounds of grass. Night attacks are also not uncommon, but instead of the expected panic, the pride can get the opposite situation. A large herd can simply demolish the enemies and trample more than 100 heavy hooves. Despite the centuries-old confrontation, the buffalo population suffers little from lion attacks. Much more dangerous is the neighborhood with a man who exterminates animals, not only because of meat, but also out of fear, because more people die from angry ungulates in Africa than from lions and leopards. Despite this, the total number of animals is about 1 million individuals, and with proper protective measures there is every chance of a successful existence. We have already seen large and strong herbivores such as elk, bison, buffalo, and even yak. But often another large animal of the bovid family grazes next to us, which is still a dark horse. Let's fix this. One of the 5 species of the genus of real bulls, and he lives next to humans for quite a long time. For example, the oldest fossil remains of domestic bulls were found in the territory of modern Syria and Turkey and date back, just imagine, to the 8th millennium BC. And during this time, the size of the animals decreased by more than 1/3. This happened, by the way, due to the fact that it is always unprofitable to keep large bulls for a long time, and new generations of calves appeared from young animals that had just reached puberty. But we got distracted. In appearance, they are typical bovids with a powerful body and well-developed muscles, while the height at the withers can reach 5 feet, and their weight can approach 2,200 pounds and even exceed. Although even a 1,500-pound bull looks very impressive. And if something happens, it will be difficult to hold such a bull. And you can go on and on about how in one day these animals can produce 100 liters of saliva or produce 100 pounds of excrement. But you and I are interested in what they are capable of in practice. And these are far from being such harmless creatures as is commonly believed. For example, bulls are very capricious, and one might say extremely stubborn, and therefore, in order to load even a small bull into a car, the help of several people is needed at once. But if the bull is larger, then it usually creates problems in proportion to its mass. They are so strong that they can even move trucks, so sometimes a crane is used to load the animals. Needless to say, bulls also have disagreements among themselves, which, of course, are resolved by force. Don't feed the bulls grass, just let your other opponent scratch his head. And when almost 2,000 pounds of fury collide on each side, it all looks quite scary. It is unlikely that anyone will dare to get into such a battle, except perhaps the third bull. And such fights in the pens occur quite often. Before an attack, a bull, as a rule, tilts his head down and begins to dig the ground with his hoovies. True, this bull, apparently, got so carried away that he managed to dig a rather large hole. Isn't he this a grave for an opponent? By the way, he is also of considerable size and decide to do the same. But the white bull does not give in and lets out its war cry. And then both engines lock horns in a fight, plowing the ground around them with their hooves. But this does not last long, and the animals, having heard some kind of squeak, stop sorting out the relationship. You can't fight in front of children. These are generally quite smart animals, and in terms of their intelligence, they are somewhere between a cat and a dog. Although we will talk about intelligence later. Bulls do not give in even to bison, which can significantly exceed their size. But they have more than enough courage and bravery, so the bull doesn't even think about giving up. Yes, and they do not avoid such rivals as the buffalo. Despite the difference in weight, often on the contrary, the bulls act more actively, and due to this they look more advantageous in the battle. And even in a fight with the king of the beasts himself, there can be an unexpected outcome. In this old video, the lion tried to attack a domestic bull, but it is not so easy to do and the prey is not going to give up. The bull even goes into a counterattack on the predator, and in the end, the lion simply runs out of the cage. Therefore, bulls are very dangerous, especially Spanish and Portuguese, because they specially raise breeds that are highly aggressive. And even driving such a bull into a pen is a whole story. Bulls usually first butt all the walls and doors around with their horns, and then reluctantly run into their apartments. And the doors in them are made, of course, metal. Therefore, it is unlikely that one should expect any different behavior on the street from such bulls. Look how easily he lifts the SUV with his horns. But no one was hurt in this video, except for the car, of course. And if it is smaller, then the bull can almost completely tear it off the ground. Moreover, such things are done not only by Spanish bulls, but also by relatively peaceful breeds, so you need to be careful with them. Although there is one animal that, with similar sizes, usually surpasses bulls in strength, and this is the wild yak. He works his horns much more actively and forces the bulls to fight, which they do not take out. And his excellent mountain training allows him to easily throw his opponents down, although sometimes even a yak meets worthy opponents. By the way, their cow friends are also not known for their calm disposition. For example, they can easily start a fight among themselves in the pasture. Even gentlemen can envy their stubbornness. Moreover, a large udder is not at all an obstacle for such a fight, and the red cow quite successfully resists her rival. It's clear that such a character is brought up from a young age, and calves in this regard follow everything that adults do. This helps them in the future to repel any enemy, for example, be it a goat or an impudent langur or even an exotic camel. And in this video, a young calf was attacked by an anaconda, and she grabbed onto him so much that the calf could not throw her off. But this snake clearly overestimated its capabilities and had practically no strength left. True, sometimes they act smarter and don't get involved in a fight. This calf appears to be significantly superior in intelligence to the one remaining behind the scenes. But if you treat them well, the animal will definitely protect you from any enemy and help you free yourself. True, for some reason they don't really favor the police, let alone their smaller neighbors. After all, one movement of the horns and first one dog flies into the air, and then the second. But everything is fine with the dogs, and they didn't even change their minds about attacking the bull, as a result of which their flights continued. Maybe this is some kind of attraction for dogs. Although there is one neighbor who can easily replace a whole herd of bulls. Not even one, but at least two neighbors. This cautious forest dweller is extremely beautiful, slender, graceful body with long legs. You just want to stroke him, but you shouldn't do this because you never know what he's up to. This beast has a menacing voice, doesn't it? Although sometimes, if the deer wants, he can make such a sound, which is unusual. In general, there are a lot of legends and ancient myths associated with this animal. So let's figure it out. The appearance of all deer is, as a rule, very recognizable. This slender body is covered with short hair, often brown in color, long legs equipped with hooves, a short, almost invisible tail and horns, which are the pride of any male. Female deer, which are called lanimi, usually do not have antlers, although there are exceptions here. For example, female reindeer grow antlers on an equal basis with males, while water deer or musk deer do not have antlers at all. No one has, but they have fangs like these, and among some peoples they were even considered vampires, drinking the blood of other animals. But somehow we have moved away from the topic. The weight of such handsome men, despite their slimness, is quite large. For example, in northern red deer, it can reach 440 pounds or more with a body length of 6.5 feet. And morale generally weigh over 700 pounds, so the animals are quite massive. At the same time, one cannot discount the large branched antlers, which make the image of the deer even more warlike. By the way, they grow very quickly in animals, and at an early stage, they are quite soft. The horns consist of cartilaginous tissue and covered with skin with blood vessels for constant nutrition. But closer to autumn, the cartilage tissue becomes coarser and denser, and the skin on the antlers dies off, and the deer appears before us in all its glory. True, the animal does not have to wear them for long, because most species shed their horns every year. Due to this feature, by the way, in myths and legends, the deer always appears as a symbol of renewal and purification. And after the first years of life, the horns grow quite small, but every next year they become longer and branchier, and the deer's legs, despite their slenderness, are very muscular, and therefore, if desired, he can accelerate to 35 miles per hour. And they also jump very well, and deer can also climb mountains. Deer live in small groups, usually 36 individuals each, and occupy a territory such that there is plenty of food. Moreover, if it is extremely rich, then the territory of the reindeer can occupy thousands of hectares per herd, although more often the opposite happens. After all, the deer's diet is quite diverse. It can be the bark and leaves of trees, as well as various cereals. Deer love coniferous branches, and in winter they happily eat acorns that they can find under the snow. In addition, a deer will never refuse mushrooms and berries, mosses, and other gifts of the forest. And of course, salt, which they replenish the lack of minerals in the body. Moreover, animal encounters almost always take place peacefully, with the exception of autumn, because then the breeding season begins for deer, and they're literally looking for someone to scratch their antlers on. It all starts with a war cry that can be heard several kilometers away. It is also the first round in the tournament, because if the weight categories are not equal, the deer will fight. Well, if not everything is so obvious, then the rivals clash with their horns, and this is a very dangerous activity because the horns have many branches and can easily cause injury. Moreover, opponents try to twist their necks as much as possible in order to catch their opponent. A special skill is the ability to put an opponent on his shoulder, because usually after this, the defeated person flees. True, this does not always happen, and this young deer is not going to give up. He quickly gets up and begins to fight even more desperately. Even with a flock of hooves on the asphalt, he crushes the enemy as if nothing had happened. True, the forces here are equal, and such a confrontation can continue for a long time, but the size of the horns doesn't always matter, and this one-horned deer decided to challenge the enemy, and he even manages to knock down his opponent, after which he flees. True, it was just a regrouping, and in the second round he showed what he was capable of. Even cold water does not stop such fighters, and the deer will fight no matter what. And this is a big problem, because sometimes such stubbornness can play a cruel joke on the animal. This unique video was filmed on the island of Hokio, and shows a deer calmly walking around the area with his trophy. But how did it happen that the severed head of his opponent ended up on the deer's antlers? The fact is that during a battle, animals very often intertwine their horns with each other, and it can be extremely difficult to disengage. It gets to the point that one of the animals, or even both, die from exhaustion, or one of them becomes easy prey for a predator. It's good that people notice these deer and help them free themselves from each other. Moreover, this is quite difficult to do, and the horns almost always have to be cut down. Sometimes even such an elongated chainsaw is used for these purposes. Although you are not always so lucky, and more often only one deer is found alive. The same goes for trees, because they can become a deadly cage for an animal. And there are a lot of such cases in the forest. And, of course, where would we be without a person? Its wire fences and various fences can also play a cruel joke on the deer. So it is very difficult to have such large horns, especially in combination with such an unpredictable temperament. For example, he can easily lock horns even with a water buffalo. And despite the fact that the deer's mass is noticeably smaller, he is in no hurry to give in. That's why the buffalo even kneels before him, and this deer attacks a huge bull, so much so that his opponent moves back. However, the animals were distracted by the operator and the confrontation ended. So you shouldn't be surprised that the deer won't save even against a ram. With his horns, he traps his opponent and does not let him go. And when the ram finally frees himself, the deer lifts him onto his horns and places him on his shoulder blades. So the ram has nothing to do here, and he tries to get his hooves away as quickly as possible. And female fallow deer are also comparable to males. Despite the lack of horns, they fight well. For example, for their showdowns, they stand on their hind legs and begin to thresh each other with the front legs. Moreover, they can stand like this for quite a long time, and such funny fights look very interesting. Although, if necessary, they will easily protect the cubs. Look how the doe pounces on the dog. She knocks him down with her front hooves, and then adds more with her hind hooves. The poor dog can't do anything against such an aggressive deer. At the same time, the cat could also be in trouble, since she managed to escape from this mother. Although the fawns themselves are also not a mistake, because in case of danger they can do this. He simply jumped from a huge bridge into the water and calmly swam. Majestic power, a durable stone helmet, and a very stubborn character. This is enough to not only survive on steep mountain slopes, but also dictate your own terms here. Mountains of North America. Few people dare to go to these rocks. There is little to eat and even less to drink, and every step here could be the last. But not for him. Meet the bighorn sheep, and it's immediately clear why it was called that, because the animal's head is decorated with massive horns, the length of which can exceed 3.5 feet, and the weight of such armor sometimes reaches 30 pounds. For example, all the other bones of the animal weigh the same amount. Adult rams themselves, living high in the mountains, can reach a weight of up to 260 pounds. At the same time, the desert subspecies are much lighter, and their weight does not exceed 80. But there is also a bighorn sheep or chubuk, which is also a subspecies of bighorn sheep and lives in our Far East. By the way, females also have horns, but they are noticeably smaller and more graceful. As befits a mountain animal, the bighorn is perfectly prepared for life in harsh climates. Its stocky body is flattened, which allows it to press closer to the rocks, and its short legs have strong muscles that confidently lift its owner up the slope. But the main thing here is the hoof. Their outer part consists of dense fabric, allowing you to rest on even the smallest protrusion, and the inner part, on the contrary, is soft, and it tightly grips unevenness. In addition, the hooves are split to the sides, which also improves traction. These off-road shoes allow animals to confidently move on any surface. Just look how confidently these rams walk on the rocks, both up and down. They are even able to jump on them, so jumping over an ordinary fence is not difficult for them. I can't even believe that these large animals are playfully flying over the fence. And young lambs are able to overcome steep climbs on a par with adults. Look how deftly this group climbs up with the lambs. In front of Ait is usually an experienced sheep that takes the route, and the rest are already following it. True, sometimes it happens that this falling stone could have thrown those who were moving below into the abyss, but everything worked out, and the group climbs up without losses. Surprisingly, the bighorn sheep quickly calculate their route and move along the rocks very confidently. This is helped by the animal's excellent vision because the eyes located on the sides and the rectangular pupil provide a 360 view without turning the head, so the rams see almost everything around them. And besides, when going down, bighorns push off from the rocks until they stand steadily. Thus, they can climb almost vertical obstacles. Needless to say, the view from their window is one of the best, and in the morning, bighorn sheep see such beauty. After all, these animals live at altitudes of up to 6,500 feet above sea level. True, there is not much vegetation there, and usually it is shrubs or dry grass. But bighorn sheep are not picky and happily eat such meager food, but they need very little water, and the animals have enough moisture obtained from food. The only thing missing is minerals, primarily salt. So Baranov is replenishing Dami in groups, and only towards the end of autumn lonely males come down from the mountains, because the breeding season begins. They are plump and full of strength, but now they need to show themselves. Just look at this look. But for stubborn males, one glance is not enough, and then they resort to such a technique. The fight has begun. The opponents accelerate towards each other and collide with their foreheads. This is a crushing blow. The sound from it is comparable to a gunshot and scatters for several kilometers around. But the rivals stand as if nothing had happened, and the clash continues. Bighorn blows have enormous force and can pierce a person's skull with an 8-fold reserve, but apparently they are not so dangerous for rams. It's all about the structure of their heads. When struck, the bones of the skull shift slightly at the joints, reducing its force. In addition, the horns are also slightly deformed, softening the blow and distributing its force, and the upper neck of the bighorn sheep plays the role of a shock absorber, absorbing the blow. But even in this case, the wave from it passes throughout the body. This is a duel of the strongest, and the rams do not enter the battle for females until they gain enough weight and grow a helmet. And by the way, this happens quite a bit in 7 years. For tradition, they make good use of the terrain and even raise their front legs for even greater acceleration. And before the collision itself, they jump forward with all their might, pushing off with their hind legs. Just crushing blows, sometimes your head even flies up after them. But such a fight is chav, and there can be 2 fat ones, 3 or even 4. Moreover, they can fight even on such narrow mountain ledges. But even with such protection, gladiators often get injured, and the horns themselves can break off, because the force of the collision is simply enormous, and by the appearance of the bighorn, one can understand how much this fighter has seen. The defeated ram usually bows his head obediently, while the winner walks proudly and kicks everyone with his hooves. Now all the sheep will choose him in the hope of being strong and viable. Although some Tolgi manage to do 2 things at once, fight and try to mate. It's immediately obvious what's important to this ram. True, the rival does not like such persistence, and he actively defends his female. In such moments, animals are very vulnerable because they can get hit in the back, but the difference from a strong head is not protected at all. As for predators, these mountain residents feel very confident in their territory. They know the slopes very well and can quickly run away from a wolf that gets stuck in the snow. In addition, if necessary, bighorn sheep simply hide on the edge of a cliff and the predator cannot reach them. But it is very dangerous for them to be on the plain, and this wolf easily catches up with the lamb, and, judging by the video, the flock is following someone else, probably its mother. But the mountain lion poses a great danger because he is an extremely secretive and dexterous hunter. This bighorn gets a powerful grip on the neck, although the cougar is not too happy with such a husband. But its unexpected appearance often takes the bighorn by surprise, and the mountain lion easily catches a lamb for itself. Although no predators can compare with humans. Indeed, due to uncontrolled hunting of mountain sheep, by the end of the 70s, their population in some states was almost completely exterminated. Resettlement of bighorn sheep. In order not to completely lose the species, people catch animals using nets and traps, and then transfer them to empty territories. And it gave its results. The number of bighorn sheep, according to modern estimates, is about 115,000 individuals. Hunting for them is even allowed, however, the number of licenses is strictly limited. Hunters kill no more than 1/900 adult old rams per year, which does not harm the population, and according to some researchers, it is even beneficial. This wayward mountain dweller turned out to be so surprising. And I hope it was interesting and you liked this lamb? Then don't be lazy to rate it.
The Arctic is a cold and treacherous place that can become the last for an unprepared creature. Thousands of kilometers of snow and ice, harsh, piercing winds, endless winter, and temperatures easily dropping below 40 degrees. But one beast has adapted beautifully to these harsh conditions. Meet the muskox, a rather unusual-looking animal, as if it had flown in from the past. And this is really the case. It is a representative of the mammoth fauna and existed even in the time of woolly rhinoceroses. The muskox is one of the few species that managed to survive the late Pleistocene extinction. For understanding the scale, about 154 species of animals larger than 100 pounds went extinct at that time. 65% of all megafauna species of that period. Scientists believe that this extinction is associated with human dispersal. Many animals encountered a new predator for which they were not ready. The muskox, reindeer, and bison were lucky enough to be the only Arctic ungulates to survive these turbulent times. As for the name, there is still debate about where to classify this ancient beast. It is believed that, despite its external similarity to bovines, it is closer to the subfamily of goats. The closest relatives of the muskox are Himalayan mammals. The second name of the muskox, musk ox, sounds quite strange because it does not have musk glands. The name probably comes from the Cree Indian language, where musk meant swampy areas where muskoxen lived. Looking at the muskox, you can feel its power. And this is really the case. Animals grow up to 8 feet in length, and their weight can reach 1,400 pounds. Thanks to their thick fur, they look much larger than they actually are. Female muskoxen are almost half the size of males, but still look formidable. The huge, heavy head is protected by a powerful bone helmet and sharp horns. Horns grow in animals, becoming longer and thicker until they reach the age of 6. By horns, you can distinguish males from females. Females have significantly thinner horns. The muskox's body is just as massive as its head, with well-developed musculature that makes up 25% of its total mass. Its legs are powerful, strong, and fairly short. They are equipped with wide hooves with sharp edges, allowing the muskox to easily navigate uneven terrain and dig for food under the snow. In case of danger, such legs accelerate the muskox to 20 miles per hour, and animals can run at this pace for several kilometers. But running from the cold is useless. In muskox habitats, temperatures can drop below 40 degrees Celsius. However, this poly-like creature doesn't care, because like a true northerner, it has virtually no protruding body parts. For example, its ears are only 6 centimeters long, and its tail is just over 10, and they are securely hidden under the fur. It covers almost the entire body of the beast and hangs down to the ground. The coarse outer coat can reach 25 inches in length, making the muskox the longest-haired animal. This fur provides excellent protection from snow, wind, insects, and other joys. It doesn't heat with its nose, but underneath lies a true treasure, kiviute, a very fine undercoat that is 8 times warmer than sheep wool. It allows the animals to withstand the harsh Arctic climate, even though the normal body temperature of the muskox is 38.5 degrees. Kiviute is the most valuable product obtained from the muskox. For example, this is what combing kiviute looks like. Ultimately, it turns out to be such a joke. But don't worry, Muskoxen themselves shed their insulation in the spring, and in their habitats it hangs on every bush. The muskox during molting looks like a dandelion that you want to blow on. Muskoxen usually live in groups of 15-20 individuals and move slowly, searching for food. This can be mosses, shrubs, plant shoots, and lichens. Not a very wide selection, but there's no escaping it, and you have to chew what you have. Therefore, to obtain nutrients, their intestines are very long, up to 160 feet, and their stomach can hold up to 90 pounds of grass. That's interesting. In winter, muskoxen choose the windiest places because there the snow cover is minimal, which means it's easier to dig up food. Although they are able to dig up food up to 16 feet under the snow, and it is also problematic for heavy animals to move through deep snow, even despite their wide hooves. But they wait out the wind and storms by turning their backs to it and hiding their calves behind them, or they stand tightly back to back and thus warm up a little. Although I don't know how applicable this word is in the Arctic in winter, but when the snow melts, you can also frolic, and here muskoxen fully justify their name because they use their heads as a ram. Look at this young muskox attacking a tree. It looks pretty serious. Even the fence is shaking. Therefore, it is better to stay away from an enraged animal. At least dogs definitely are, and even in winter, nothing prevents him from butting. But the real battles begin at the end of summer. Then comes the rut, and the male's rhythm of life is disrupted. During the search for females, their feeding and resting regime is disrupted, so they become especially irritable. The males scratch their horns on the bushes, shake their heads from side to side, and beat the ground with their hooves. And if no one is ready to back down, then the muskoxen charge towards each other, delivering crushing blows with their heads. They look very impressive, of course, but the animals can withstand such blows, and there can be up to 40 in one duel. But usually it ends sooner, and one of the opponents flees. It must be very exciting to watch the duel of these ancient animals so closely. Look how one of them decided to dodge a blow. There's nothing left to do but admit defeat and flee. And of course, they love to sort things out in front of an audience. In this duel, all the seats are definitely sold out, and young bulls are watching the battle of the muskoxen with interest. And there's something to fight for here, because all the females are ready to continue their lineage only with the alpha male. Although in large herds, there are usually 2 or 3 close to the alpha, who sometimes also get lucky. Pregnancy lasts about 8 months, after which, as a rule, one muskox calf is born. If there are 2 calves, there is a high chance that the mother will not feed either of them. Interestingly, after giving birth, a kind of mother's club is immediately formed. All the calves begin to play with each other, bringing adults closer in this way. Although this does not last long, and after 2.5 months, muskox calves switch to forage, which leaves no time for games. Living in such groups increases the survival rate of muskoxen, because in case of danger, the herd forms a tight ring, turning their horns outwards, and it is very difficult to break through it. Therefore, Arctic wolves try to put the herd to flight and create panic, and they are masters at this, and now the muskoxen are taking off. Now wolves can easily find a suitable target in terms of size and attack it. At the same time, they are able to attack a large male, and if they find such a loner, then the muskox has no chance against this white pack. Speaking of predators, it is impossible not to mention bears, which pose a serious danger to muskoxen. Here, despite the poor quality of the footage, you can see how the clubfoot puts the whole herd to flight, and the youngest members of it begin to lag behind. Unfortunately, such is the law of nature. But no predator can compare to man. Muskoxen have suffered very much from humans. This defensive tactic made the animals an easy target, because poachers shot muskoxen in whole herds while they were standing on the defensive. This led to the fact that the muskox, which once inhabited the entire northern part of Eurasia, was completely exterminated, and in other places its range was greatly reduced to isolated groups. But since the beginning of the 20th century, this species has been taken under protection, and the situation is slowly beginning to improve. Bold attempts are even being made to revive the muskox population in their historical range, and they are already bearing fruit. Thus, for example, in Yamal, Taimyr and Yakutia, by the year 2000, muskoxen were introduced, and they settled in well there, producing offspring and increasing their numbers. Similar results were also obtained in the United States, where muskoxen were brought to Alaska, where they were also exterminated at one time. Let's hope that countries will be able to protect these truly unique animals from poachers and humanity will not lose another species. So unusual this relic beast turned out to be. And I hope you found it interesting and you liked the video. This beast is a true embodiment of power. 1 ton of weight, 6 feet tall, and impressive horns. All of this, as if, hints to everyone about it. And besides a ferocious temperament, he mastered the ability to create underwater ambushes. Meet the Asian buffalo, and like many cool animals, he's known by several names. He's also the Indian buffalo, the water buffalo, and even Arnie. But in general, Asian buffaloes are an entire genus of animals that, besides the main character, include 4 other species. The wild Asian buffalo itself has 4 subspecies that are somewhat different from each other. Looking at this animal, you feel some kind of insurmountable fear. Just imagine a 6-foot giant weighing about a ton, with heavy, powerful hooves and sharp horns reaching 2 meters. It seems like the slightest movement, and this buffalo will tear apart all the buildings around. But it doesn't happen. Strictly speaking, modern buffaloes have long been accustomed to humans and have lost their pure blood, becoming much calmer. Therefore, they are widely used by people for various purposes. For example, this handsome fellow is used to transport heavy loads with the help of such a simple device. And besides, Asian buffaloes are indispensable helpers in agriculture. After all, they live in countries such as India, Nepal, Bhutan, Thailand, and others. And there, mechanization of work in the fields is extremely weak, and people can't do without buffaloes. Buffaloes easily plow both hard virgin soil and rice fields, while they themselves are knee-deep in mud. And this is not a problem for them at all, because for buffaloes, this is a natural habitat. It even comes to the point that people arrange buffalo races in harnesses right in the field. And most of all, I don't envy people who drive these bulls. Oh well, Asian buffaloes are very fond of everything related to water and mud. This is how they escape from high temperatures and ubiquitous insects, which are simply countless in Asia. All their free time, animals are looking for either a suitable puddle or a pond where they can spend the whole day. And people often tie domestic buffaloes right near these bodies of water. This is because the buffalo has poorly developed sweat glands and is extremely intolerant of heat. By the way, if there is no puddle nearby, the buffalo can easily dig one itself. To do this, they use their powerful horns that easily lift the ground, or they can simply dig up fresh, cool earth to cool down in it. And besides, there are always herons near the pond who will gladly clean the buffalo's hide and collect parasites for themselves. Well, buffaloes themselves are inextricably linked to water, because a large part of their diet consists of aquatic plants. They're actually quite good swimmers, despite their weight, and can even dive. Often, buffaloes dive to the bottom to feed there. Therefore, be extra careful when sailing down the river, because suddenly such a head may appear from the water. And it's even easier to encounter a buffalo in a puddle under a tree. So, as you understand, the name water buffalo was given to this animal for a reason. Like all even-toed ungulates, they are herd animals. Although herds of wild animals are small and without a clear leader, during migrations, the oldest individuals go first. The young ones stay in the middle, and the young, strong buffaloes bring up the rear. If the herd is threatened, buffaloes perform a diversionary maneuver. They run in a circle and then return to their old spot, hiding in the bushes and forming a fighting semicircle. So when a predator stalks the herd, it's met with a full force. Interestingly, older males become very aggressive, and often the herd drives them away. These buffaloes wander alone or lead a female with them, which makes them even more dangerous. Although, in general, if you meet a buffalo in the jungle, it's better not to approach it and quickly disappear from sight. After all, the animal can become interested in people, and that's already very dangerous. It's good that people were able to scare these buffaloes away, but that doesn't always happen. They run pretty well, by the way, even young individuals. And catching one will be very difficult. Even when sailing on a boat, you should be very careful, because the buffalo can jump into the water and try to attack the boat. Need I say that fights between these bulls are not uncommon? Buffaloes raise their heads high, trying to show their readiness for battle. Then they run towards each other and clash horns with all their might. And this fight continues until one of the combatants flees. The sharp horns of buffaloes can inflict serious injuries on each other, and it's not uncommon for opponents to become entangled. Here, one of the buffaloes is running away from the battlefield. Sometimes, Asian buffaloes deliver such powerful blows that these fights always attract many spectators. It even happens that one of the fighters manages to lift the other on his horns, but in this case, the opponents are equal, which means the confrontation will be long. People try with all their might to separate the animals, but they can't do it. It's best for them to just wait for the fight to end. Although such charges are not uncommon among water buffaloes, even the domesticated species has its own feisty temperament. Here, he's settling scores with a hornless but no less stubborn rival. And of course, the buffalo uses its advantage, throwing mud at its opponent. Such fights, by the way, are a popular pastime in many Southeast Asian countries. And you can even bet on buffaloes. Interestingly, these animals show entirely different qualities when they are in danger. For example, Asian buffaloes absolutely cannot stand felines. Their presence is like a red flag to a bull. Therefore, they act lightning fast. Just look, a leopard grabs a calf and the whole herd rushes to its aid. The cat tries to escape with its prey as quickly as possible, but it hits a tree and loses it. You can only envy such unity among buffaloes. But there are bigger cats in the jungle. Now even he can catch a gar, the largest bull on the planet. Therefore, the striped predator is very dangerous. But here, one of the bulls turns around and meets the tiger, allowing the herd to escape. 2, and then 3 buffaloes help him. But the tiger is determined. The bulls manage to fend off their comrade, and the whole herd returns to defend the wounded buffalo. Ultimately, the tiger, despite its size, has to retreat. It's a good thing these fighting machines don't show aggression toward humans. For example, they can easily even carry a person on their back. And they don't even mind when this boy climbs on their backs and pulls their horns. Maybe it's because people bathe them. And some really cool buffaloes bathe not just anywhere, but in the real ocean. As for the population, it's declining, as you might expect. It's not even about hunting, but about the settlement of remote territories and the plowing of land. There are practically no places left where the Asian buffalo can live in its natural habitat. And even those that remain are national parks. In addition, wild buffaloes readily interbreed with domestic ones, losing their pure bloodline and independently putting their species at risk of extinction. So that's the Asian water buffalo, strong, fearless, and amazing. I hope you found it interesting and enjoyed the video. If you did, don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up and leave a comment about who else you'd like to see reviewed. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to turn on notifications. I'll be back soon. See you later.